Okay, so if I was a company that was running a high ticket offer, whatever that looks like, marketing, recruitment, web design, whatever it is, and I set myself the task of starting a new interested sales conversation every day, every working day of the month via cold email, then this would be where I would start. Ultimately, when we're looking at the success of any lead generation campaign, there are three key areas that we can point the finger at. And each of these three areas that I'm about to show you have their own responsibility towards the success of a lead generation campaign. So to put it as simply as possible, with cold email specifically, you're looking at three things. You're looking at the sending volume of that campaign. So is the sending volume enough that we actually have enough emails going out in the first place to even get any leads anyway? The second is then the reply rates. So reply rates as a function of deliverability, not just like, oh, great, we're getting a few replies. It's actively tracking this and setting a KPI for it so that you can then chalk that campaign off, or then you can trust that deliverability is where it needs to be. Then finally, we've got positive reply rate, and using this to track whether your campaign is performing in a state of message market fit or not. If your positive reply rate is below KPI, then there are set suite of things that we can do to improve campaigns based on that metric. If your reply rates are below KPI, then there are a set suite of things we can do to improve that metric. And likewise, if your sending volume is not at KPI, then there are a set suite of things that we can do to go and improve that. So whenever we're tracking the success of any lead generation campaign, we need to look at it under one of these microscopes, and it is as simple as that. If the sending volume of our campaign is too low, then this is probably the most simple one. What we need to do is just buy more email accounts. So we buy more email accounts, we increase the daily sending volume on each of the accounts that we already have, and we ultimately just send more emails. But it's important that we don't just send more emails without making sure that our deliverability at the heart of our campaign is optimized. So before increasing the sending volume, you need to first look at, is our campaign above KPI in terms of the reply rate, right? If it is, and sending volume is too low, then that's an immediate signal that you need to then go and purchase more email accounts and increase the daily sending limit on the accounts that you already have. If deliverability, however, is below KPI, then you need to respond to that by doing a selection of these things. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to run inbox placement tests. I'm going to show you the makeup of these in a moment, but an inbox placement test will ultimately tell you through all of the email accounts that you're currently sending from in your outreach campaign, which accounts are currently going to the spam folder and which accounts are currently going to the inbox folder. And then your response from that is to then take out those accounts that are currently going to the spam folder from your campaign, put them on warm up for roughly 2 weeks and just keep them on warm up for 2 weeks, and then swap in fresh accounts to then make up for that dip in sending volume. So on a side note here, it's very important that before you start any sort of lead generation campaign using email, that you initially set up more email accounts than what you actually need, because you need to have the ability to be able to swap in and out of accounts when email accounts that you're sending from burn, which sometimes is inevitable. Sometimes things are out of your control and you need to have that beeline set up for yourself so that you don't need to suffer the consequences of large gaps in your sending volume. Okay, so if your reply rate is below KPI, we usually set it as 6% reply rate. If our reply rates are below that, then we know that we need to figure out something to improve deliverability. So, like I said, I'm doing inbox placement tests. I'm checking my copy for any, spam words that usually get filtered out. And I'm obviously then, as a result of that, taking those words out of my campaigns. And then also, there is this weird phenomenon, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but ultimately where copy can get burnt, in the sense that if you send in very similar emails, even if you do have spin tags, but if you've sent like the same copy sequence for quite a while, that copy can get burnt, and you can start to see sort of drops in reply rates as time goes on. So it's important that even if you do have like a really good angle that's working really well, you find some, like a few different ways to still send a very similar angle, but just do it in a way where the copy is in a different structure or a slightly different format. That's going to help to avoid this thing happening where often your copy can actually get burnt over time, and you kind of see a gradual decline in reply rates and positive reply rates over time. So that's how we're going to go about solving any reply rate problems. Now, if our positive reply rate is too low, then that means that people just aren't resonating with the messaging that we're sending out. So there are two things that we can then do in response to this. There's either that we, change the copywriting approach entirely. So the angle, we need to start setting up some A/B tests to find some different angles that work better than the one that we currently have. Or just start A/B testing from the start so that you can test different assumptions about what your market might respond best to. Again, this idea of message market fit, and just start to see what messages people are responding best to off the bat, and then double down on the ones that perform best. Another thing to consider here is, are we sending to the right people? A big part of this is to almost consider all possibilities, in the sense that it's no good just changing the copywriting if the people that you're reaching out to in the first place aren't the right targets for your offer anyway, okay? So you need to also look at it under that microscope. Are we reaching out to the right people? Look at the sort of company sizes, the demographics. Are these what we would class as a fit for what our offer is? And once you've kind of drafted up a plan based on that, you then want to make those changes to your campaign. So if your positive reply rate is under the KPI that it should be, make these changes to your campaign. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into a live campaign that's running right now, and I'm going to show you how you can assess any lead gen campaign on this 3-step criteria that I've just gone and shown you. So this is a campaign that has been running for 10 days now. So whenever we're measuring stats, I would usually look at campaigns under different scopes. So, and almost see this as like different zoom levels of the microscope that you're looking under. So this campaign's only been running for 10 days, but what you can do is look at your campaigns under different terms as well. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to show you now how I'm going to look at this campaign and what decisions I'm going to now make, or what things I'm going to pay most attention to, given that obviously this campaign is in its early days. We don't want to make decisions too quickly. We do want to let it sort of run on a little bit before we really make any data-backed decisions. But this campaign here, for example, I mentioned at the start that the KPI to roughly start a new conversation every day with a lead generation campaign, a new qualified sales conversation every day, the KPI should be at least 500 emails per day that you send out. So you can see here, taking into account the fact that we've had 2 weekend days, we're currently on KPI in terms of sending volume to go and hit by the end of the week at least 500 emails per day. Okay, and you can see here as well, day to day, we're roughly around the sort of 520 mark. So we're on KPI to go and hit that goal by the end of the week. In terms of reply rates then, obviously I mentioned that you roughly want to aim for about a 6% reply rate. So we're way above KPI on this. Quite common that you will see this at the start of your campaigns, because that's where deliverability will be at its highest. So you just, the only recommendation I'd have here is to not get too ahead of yourself when the reply rate is quite good off the bat. Your goal with this is you want to be measuring that consistently. So if you start to see it drop a little bit or even go below 6%, then that's where you can start making various different changes. If you do see your reply rate drop below 6%, then as I mentioned, what we can do is then go and perform some inbox placement tests. So what this does on your campaign is it will ultimately send emails from all the different email accounts that you're sending from in your campaigns, and it will send various different emails out to both Google inboxes and Microsoft inboxes, and it will report back a score based on how many of those emails hit the spam folder or hit the inbox folder. So you can see here that our deliverability is currently very solid across all of our across all of our sending accounts. So right now, my main focus for this campaign is not really on deliverability. I can sort of trust that this is pretty solid for now. And then what I will do is, if I do notice that reply rates start to dip a little bit, then what I'll do is I'll start doing these inbox placement tests more regularly. If there are any accounts that are burnt or not delivering as I want them to be, then I can just take them out of the campaigns and then replace them. So currently for this campaign, as mentioned, our sending volume is on KPI and our reply rate is on KPI. The thing that is currently just under double the KPI that we want to be at is the interested response rate. So for this particular example, this is now a real example that I'm going to show you for what we're going to do to actually respond to this, so that we can, again, keep maintaining that goal of being able to start a new sales conversation every day through a cold email campaign like this. So whenever an interested response rate is below the KPI that I want it to be, as I mentioned to you, there are two things that we can do. We can either change the copywriting approach, or we can change the lead list that we're reaching out to entirely. So let me now show you how I'm going to kind of assess this and make the best decision, or the best data back decision, in terms of what to do next. So the most obvious place to go for this is to obviously go to the master inbox, see what people are saying. It's as simple as that. We're first going to look at the interested responses to see what type of companies are interested in the offer. And then we're also going to then look at some of the people who have either, unsubscribed or have replied no thanks. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for patterns between the people who aren't interested, the people who are interested, and then the people who are unsubscribing. And we're going to see if there's anything that we can do to double down on our lead list as well, to make things better for our interested response rate moving forward. So to do this, you just want to make sure that whatever sequencer you're using, or whatever system you've set up, has the ability for you to make these assessments really easily. So for me, what I can do really easily is just go and bring up all the interested leads, and I can go and assess these one by one to see what they have in common. And then to start tracking the people who weren't interested, what I can then do is just select the non-automated reply option. And then I can go and look at some of the things that the people who aren't interested have in common. And then what I'm going to ultimately assess are things like the company sizes. So what about my interested leads is a commonality? What about my non-interested leads is something that is common across the board? And I can use that data to then actively work on increasing that positive reply rate. This is what we call kind of working towards message market fit. And it's, initially when you start a campaign, it's all assumption based. And the way to improve your lead generation campaigns over time is to actively use the data to go and improve those three things that I said at the start of the video. You need to be working on making sure that the sending volume is always consistent. So obviously for that, you need a big enough market in the first place to even make an at-scale approach like this make sense. You then need your reply rate to be solid. So you want to aim for roughly a 6% reply rate. We also include automated responses in that reply rate as well, because for an autoresponder to even be triggered, you have to hit the inbox. So it's a good measurement of deliverability across the board, even tracking, automated responses. So we want to aim for a minimum of a 6% reply rate. And then, like I said, a 10% positive reply rate indicates that we have a pretty solid message market fit with the copy that we're sending out. So each of these things needs processes and ways that you apply the data to then go and make improvements. And if you can do this, and if you can focus on just those three simple things consistently, this framework can confidently generate you a new sales conversation every day through something like cold email. Again, you just need the prerequisites of a big enough market, enough sending accounts, enough budget to actually set up enough email accounts off the bat to make this make sense. And pretty much that's pretty much it in terms of prerequisites. Then you just need to implement best practices that we can help you to do. And there's no reason why you won't be able to consistently generate a new sales conversation each day through an at-scale lead gen channel like cold email. Let me just pan over to some evidence now so you can see this working in action. So here's an example of a client channel. I want you to just look at the dates as I go through these, and you can see that on average we're roughly at around one new lead or one new sales conversation each day between the months of August and September. So if we scroll down, 3 first day, 1 here, August 14th, then we had a weekend, we had a bit of a jump between here where we're building new campaigns, then we get things back going again, 3 leads that day, had one on Saturday, Tuesday we had 3 come in then, and 3rd, 4th, 5th, had quite a few on the 5th, and 9th, 10th, 11th. So you can roughly get an idea for the consistency of leads that come in when you can get these 3 areas right. And I think that I wanted to just sum up what really makes it a successful lead gen campaign into really the 3 most important areas, because I think that a lot of people really overcomplicate it in the online space now, but it still just runs on basic fundamentals like that, really. Just sending volume, make sure that your emails are going into the inbox, and make sure that your copy's half decent, and track that via those 3 core metrics that I just went over there. And the maths around this, again, the reason that we typically aim for 500 emails per day, you might be thinking, what's the reason for that? And there is a bit of math-based logic around it as well. So on average, whenever you track stats with an email campaign, the ratio between number of emails you send to number of people that you contact is roughly around 2 to 1. We would usually send like a 2 to 3 step email sequence. So email 1 and then 2 follow-ups. And we'd usually prioritize the first email going out because that's where we see most of our responses. And yeah, on average, we tend to find that the ratio between emails sent to people contacted is roughly 2 to 1. So if we send 500 emails per day, right, that's roughly 250 people per day that we're going to contact on average. All that we've got to do then is just make sure that A, our addressable market is big enough, and B, the 250 people that we're reaching out to every day are the right people. And for that, we can use tools like Clay, we can use AI to qualify leads before reaching out to them. But then we ultimately want to then get a 6% reply rate from that 250 people every day. And again, that can be a combination of people saying no thanks, it can be interested responses, it can be automated responses, it can be just any response back to our campaign basically. Roughly that would be on average at a minimum 15 replies per day. And then the next and final thing to do is then aim to get a 10% positive reply rate to our campaigns. So do the maths. If 10% of those 15 replies is 1.5 leads per day on average, obviously you can't have half a person. So using maths, using logic, if we aim to get, achieving those stats consistently, then that means that each day on average will bring in roughly a new sales conversation each day for our high ticket offer. So that was just a quick overview really. I think I just wanted to push this out there for people that are maybe overcomplicating their outbound campaigns or outbound motion that they're looking to build at the moment. It really doesn't need to be complex. Just view it in terms of 3 simple metrics like I've just explained here. And if you do need help simplifying outbound and just getting a consistent stream of new sales conversations coming into your funnel, feel free to just drop me a message. I'll be happy to make any of this more specific to your offer and your business uniquely. Feel free to just book a call. There should be like a little link up there. I'll be happy to talk about all this with you. Thanks very much for checking this out.